All right, everyone. Good afternoon. I heard that's a teacher trick. You just say something, you sit quiet, you look around, and then it's supposed to work. It worked this time. Thank you for that. My name is Zakia Ansari. I am the Advocacy Director for a statewide alliance called the Alliance for Quality Education. I am a mom of 8, a grandmother of 3, and have been doing educational justice work for almost 20 years. And I want to say thank you for giving your time and bringing your body and your energy to this space today. I want to get that up front. It's going to be a great conversation, and thank you, thank you. And the work that I do is fighting for, as I shared, educational justice, right? Specifically, the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, which actually one of our co-sponsors is Senator Robert Jackson, as well as Senator Velmanette Montgomery, who we will bring up in a second. But for far too long, we have been fighting for billions of dollars owed to Black and brown children. And so as we sit in this space today, and we've been to different conferences, different workshops, et cetera, and we've heard the plight and the stories. We also heard the successes, but also we've heard the fight back, right? That we as a people come from greatness. And our fight is real, it's ongoing, but we do it in Black joy, we do it with Black dignity, we do it with Black respect. But at some point, over and over again, we have to challenge white supremacy, right? On a constant basis. That is what it is. But this panel today, I think sometimes we want to separate those, like everything that we struggle for is steeped in that, right? And so I think it's important for us to remember that, to not be afraid of that, to unapologetically say that, so we are constantly reminded. As we sit here today, billions of dollars owed to Black and brown and poor children throughout New York State. A generation of children for 13 years have missed out on opportunity and access. Hi, Dr. Young. And as I stand here today, knowing that I had no voice 20 years ago as a mom, at least I thought I did not. And as I have been transformed in a path that was paved for me that I didn't know would bring me to this space where I'm sitting here today with you beautiful, amazing folks, but also have been in this long journey. And many of you in this space have been on this journey with me. So as we move on, that is my shtick and my spiel, but it is my passion, it is my truth. So what I want to do, though, is bring up 2 amazing elected officials who have been fighters in our community for decades. First, I want to bring up the one and only, the amazing Senator Velmanette Montgomery.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Anybody from Brooklyn in here? Thank you. Anybody from Albany in here? Anybody from Manhattan? They call it Harlem. Let me just say welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I am especially honored to have been asked to join this particular workshop because this is one of my favorite issues out of everything else that we do. And I think the other person who it's most appropriate for me to be partnered with is Senator Robert Jackson. So I guess all of you were too young, that was before you were born, but he walked to Albany because he cares so much about the funding for education in the city of New York and the state. So now he's in the Senate, he doesn't have to walk there anymore, but he still does have to take the train. So let me just say the only thing that because we're just gonna say welcome and thank you for coming, but I do wanna say to you, please pick up one of these brochures and open it all the way up, because if you don't open it up, you're gonna miss most of what's in it. And that's because what we're trying to do is when we talk about getting over the barriers, whatever we consider, some of it is racism, some of it is just people just lie to us all the time. They don't put the money where the mouth is. So this is really an opportunity that I have to say, let's not use any of that as an excuse. for not moving ahead. And let me say that practically, I think 2/3 of my staff, if I count everybody, 2/3 of my staff came to me as interns in a program that's in this brochure. Anybody from my staff who was an intern, a fellow, I see one of my former fellows way back when, stand up too, God, there's two of them over here. Where's my staff? Anybody on the staff? Any interns? These women came at a time when we had just started to sort of create some opportunities for young people of color in particular to become part of this process. But they didn't stay here. They went on to do other great and wonderful things. Anybody in my staff? I don't have anybody here. Shakti, where's Shakti? Shakti's not here. Where is Shakti? There's Shakti. Who else is here, Shakti? Anybody? Stand up, Fabian. Fabian. Well, Deborah. She didn't come as an intern. She came as a seasoned community organizer. So thank you. She is. But Shakti, Fabian, stand up again, please. Fabian, these young people all came. They are now working for me, by the way. They came to Albany as interns, and they're now working in over here on the Capitol, putting together legislation, analyzing bills, representing us in various meetings, meeting with constituents, beginning to understand what the issues are that our people are living with back home in the district. Those are the kind of people we want to see in Albany, and they will come from us, from our homes, from your communities, but we have to make it possible for them to be here. And this is what we've tried to do for this program. SUNY students have an opportunity, CUNY students have an opportunity, but there are so many, many, many other places. All of the major agencies, all of the authorities, they all have internships. That's how our young people will be able to be employed in future. That's how they are introduced to new careers, and that's how we can seed these institutions with young people, especially young people of color. So let's, while we fight the racism, the anti-discrimination battle, let us also fight for the progress that we can make happen just based on the fact that we're paying attention and we're sending them out into these institutions so that they have a future for success and progress as they move ahead. Thank you again for your attention and your work, and let's continue with the hopefulness that we came here with so many decades ago. Thank you.
Y'all could do better than that, please. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna bring up our next co-sponsor who walked to Albany twice, and I had the privilege and honor to walk the second time with him to Albany with my then 15-year-old son, 150 miles. Our motto was pick up the pace, Robert. So, yeah, I don't want to do too much, but I can't begin to express how powerful it has been to be on this journey with Robert Jackson, from city council member to Robert run, literally, and to see the man who started CFE as a parent with other parents sitting in state legislature now as a New York State senator is beyond pride. Yes. Thank you, Robert. Senator Robert Jackson.
Thank you, Zakia. Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes a todos. ¿Cómo estás? Good. So anyone that wants a seat, there's seats up front, so come on. We're selling them $10 a piece. No, really, there's seats available. Those standing in the back, come on up. So let me thank you all for coming, and obviously this workshop is very important. We're talking about dismantling racism in the educational system. So how do you do that? Well, obviously, those that have the money, if they're not happy with the education in the public school system, where they're going to send their kids? Or anywhere else they want to, because they can afford to. But if you can't afford it, where you going? You're going to your local public schools. And when you look at our local public schools, you know, there's studies that shown that New York State, New York City are the most segregated schools in the nation. Now, I don't know that for to be a fact because I haven't been around the nation, but I've been around New York City and I know what the situation is. So, for example, I was in Schenectady, New York, last Monday, in which, if you're not aware, Schenectady, New York, filed a lawsuit against the state of New York regarding discrimination with the federal government. They filed it with the feds because Schenectady is majority all people of color. And they feel they're not getting the resources, the money that they need to provide their children with a good education. So they filed an action against the state of New York. They filed it with the feds. I was out at Wyandanch, New York, the 4th largest school system in New York State, and they receive more money than all of the districts in the state of New York except New York City. They are missing about $137 million, and they filed an action with the feds because Brentwood is mostly all children of color, majority Latino. So quite frankly, that's what we expect them to do, to file an action and go to distance. When you talk about parents fighting for their children, they don't want lip service, they want action. And action means you go and you file appeals, and if the appeals don't work, then if necessary, file a lawsuit. If necessary to walk 150 miles, you walk 150 miles. That's what you have to do. So the struggle right now is who is the big ogre in the room? Don't be afraid. Who is it? Thank you. Because quite frankly, you know, we filed a lawsuit in May of '93. Michael Rebell, he's a real hero. And we have a saying, Michael Rebell and I. Michael Rebell is the attorney that filed the lawsuit, the Campaign for Physical Equity. I said, Michael, you're the brains, and I'm the bronze, and together we can't be beat. Because you got to have more than one people doing it, one more person doing it. So in 2016, AQE said, this is the 10th anniversary of the Campaign for Physical Equity, and we're going to walk to Albany. Robert, are you going to walk with us? I said, you know I am. So basically, where's Maria? Maria's here. She kept saying, keep up the pace, Robert. Keep up the pace, Robert. And I had a drum and, made out of a plastic container with a wooden spoon, and I was beating that drum all the way to Albany. Because you have to set a pace, you know, when you're walking, quite frankly. And I say to you that what it's about is making sure that our children receive the opportunity for a sound basic education. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you have children in the system? Raise your hand. Okay? And everybody else, how many of you think that you want your children to receive a sound basic education? Raise your hand. No, you don't. Why are you raising your hand? That's the minimum standard of education that the state is required to give. Do you want that for your children? I know I don't. And let me tell you what the highest court said, the Court of Appeals. That the state of New York is obligated to educate our children so they can graduate from high school knowing how to read, knowing how to write, knowing how to serve on a jury, and being able to hold competitive employment. And flipping burgers is not competitive. It's a repetitive action, but it's not competitive. That's what the highest court has said. And so we have to continue to organize, and fight back. So right now, our governor has said, foundation aid formula, you're only getting $338 million statewide. And you know how much the state owes New York State children? $4.1 billion. And you know what the question a lot of people ask? Well, where you think you're going to get the money from? And let me tell you, without hesitation, it's in the budget. We're not asking for anything new. They owe it to our children. And generations of children have been denied that opportunity. And you know one thing? When they're denied that opportunity, then we're not looking after their best interests. So I'm willing to fight the governor and anyone else going to stand in our way from our children to get a good quality education. So let me thank the panelists for being here. And have a great panel. And audience, ask a lot of questions. And then, you know, let me tell you, I have my shirt. Where's Dr. Lester Young? Where you at, Doctor? Woo! Board of Regents, Dr. Lester Young. For many, many years, fighting the good fight. Thank you. But the theme of our walk to Albany was walk a mile for a child. That's what the theme. So I had my shirt last night. I said, you know what I should do? We should wear this shirt, get some drums, and get the banner and walk through the plaza. Walk through the plaza. Because it's about organizing. But I thought about it a little bit too late. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so we're gonna get this party started. So as I said, I have 8 children. I just graduated my 8th child out of New York City Public Schools last year. It's 2018 May. I mean June of 2018. And I say that only because for a couple of reasons. One is that they are products of the public school system in New York that works, that we know works. But also that they, you know, I had one that went to Oneonta and another one that went to Niagara Community. I had a few that graduated from City College and one that's currently in City College and the other one is in City Tech. So I can't fight for K to 12 if I'm not fighting for higher education, right? That's not possible. Now the goal of, and the reason we do that is not that every child needs to go to college, but they should be prepared for college if they want to, right? And so this is about, and all this is steeped in kind of what we talked about in educational racism. So just in case, I want to make sure everybody know they're in the right place. It is dismantling systemic racism in education, opportunities to succeed from pre-K to State University of New York. So everybody in the right place? Yeah. All right, good, because we locked the doors, you can't leave. So I'm going to introduce my panel. To my left, my dear, loving Dr. Traynham. Are you on the panel too, or are you going to talk? Yeah, she's on the panel. You're on the panel? Oh, I'm sorry. This is royalty right here. Okay, threw me off, Dr. Traynham. Okay. To my left is, I often say, you know, I'm in this space as a parent leader. I'm not the exception. I'm the rule when you truly invest in parent engagement, right? So some people say, I wish I had parents like you. I say you have parents like that in your school every day. Right? So it's how you choose to invest in them. And so this is my sister right here who's been fighting the good fight. And we met when we were parent leaders as part of the organization. So it's beautiful to see her grow in her space. Organizing Director for Citizen Action of New York, Jamaica Miles. Jonathan Jones, where you at? All right, Jonathan's here. Jonathan is the Commissioner Recreation, Youth, and Workforce Services, City of Albany, and an EOP alumni of Albany campus. We got Langie, because she told me how to say it, because my people screw up my name all the time. Is it Kadeska? Yes. Okay. And she is the Student Government President, CEO, University at Albany, State University of New York, and current EOP student. We got Christian Palmer. Christian is the Digital Solution Planner, Vox Media Incorporated, EOP alumni of Albany campus as well. And man, oh man, we got the royalty on the panel right here. Dr. Sheila Evans Traynham is here with us, former Associate Commissioner of New York, right? State of New York. But more than that, this sister right here is, I'm not going to go into it because I can fawn over Dr. Traynham over and over again, but she is a legacy. She is one of our elders, and she holds us and those who have come after her under her arm and under her wing. And thank you, Dr. Traynham, for joining us. So we're going to start off with the first question, which is how we define as the problem. So I'm going to start, I'm not going to start with Jamaica because Jamaica said no. So the first question is, what are the ways systemic racism show up in education, K-12 and higher ed? And before everybody starts speaking, I just want to be clear. In a loving, respectful way, like I'm trying to keep us so we answer all the questions, I may say, beloved, and that just means wrap it up. We good? We can agree to that together? All right, awesome. So does somebody want to go first? I don't need to call. First question, what are the ways systemic racism shows up in education, K-12 and higher ed? Who wants to start? Yes, sir.
suggestion?
Yes, sir.
It would be good if you stand up to respond so people can see you.
Oh, sure.
Or you can stand up here.
And good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
I was brought to the University of Albany by Dr. Carson Carr. Anybody was brought here by Dr. Carr? So me being late to this panel, I have already upset Dr. Carr. However, racism, I'll just use my story, for example, because there are other people who can really, really get to the nitty-gritty of it. But when I was in high school, I come from Syracuse, New York. When I was in high school, my guidance counselor told me that I would not graduate high school. And then Dr. Carr came and got me. I was in the EOP program. I'm an upward bound student. I'm a young scholar student. Every program you can think of since the 6th grade, I have been a part of. And so Dr. Carr came and got me, put me in the University of Albany through the EOP program, put some academic discipline in me, and then I graduated in 4 years. And then I got my master's in a year and a half, graduating early. And then Dr. Evans Traynor gave me an internship at the New York State Education Department. The reason why I'm telling you my story, because my story is similar to other people's story, in the fact that it takes a village to raise our own children. The other thing I want to bring attention to is the way we communicate to our kids, right? Sometimes you don't have to believe the racism that is out there necessarily if you have pride in yourself. My 4-year-old daughter, if you were to ask her and you say, I would say to her, "Are you black?" She says, "Yes." And she would respond back, "And proud." That has given her the confidence to know that when she goes into a classroom, she doesn't need a teacher to teach her fractions and then say, "Okay, Jordan, we're going to come back to you in a minute." No, she can do everything. And lastly, I'll say this. We come from a heritage of people who have invented the traffic light, the refrigerator, the air condition, under extremes oppression. And so now in this 21st century, it's upon us to raise our own kids to understand that, yes, there is institutional racism in our education system. But we have now got to a place where we can look at one another and say to each other, that's not what we are. And you need not to fall victim to that truth, because it is not true for us. Racism is ignorance. And I have been around some of the greatest black people the world has ever seen. But we've got to love each other too, because let's be honest, we here at Caucus Weekend, sometimes we get in trouble with each other. We don't always value each other. And that's all I will say. And I'll give it to you.
Thank you. If I may, just keep my seat, have a bad knee, and I drag some heavy bags over from my last presentation, which was just this past session. So, but let me just say a little bit about systemic racism. I think I have to thank Donald Trump for being his authentic self and representing to us what racism looks like.
Yes.
And I think prior to his becoming president, not that I'm a Trump supporter, but I think his actions and his verbiage and, you know, his ability to bring out the worst in people, let me tell you something. I think that was always there. But somehow or another, he has made everyone in America understand that racism is alive and well.
Yes.
Anytime a person says, I could go out on Fifth Avenue and kill somebody and still be elected, that's because he understands that he is speaking for those that are too afraid to speak up for himself. And I submit to you that violence has increased in America, that racism has increased in America. What is the old saying? The fish rots from the head. And I just want to say, racism, the fish is stinking in our house.
Anybody else want to address that?
I'll go ahead. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you guys all for being here, and I'm honored to be here as well. I think what I want to really dive into is I think my story, and that's something that kind of automatically comes from the heart. Nothing I've written, nothing that, you know, I had prepared or anything, but I think kind of as I navigate through my journey and stuff, and as I self-reflect back, I think of moments of discomfort and moments of where racism really hit me truly to this day that I still remember like it was yesterday. I think one of the moments is in high school. I used to, well, even before that, so like pre-K and elementary school, every report card I received, there was always comments on there saying he's too talkative. He speaks too much. And it was something that empowered me to, it always kind of reflected me in a negative way. And I would always accompany my mom, and my parents who didn't speak English, so I would have to be the translator in between. And mind you, I'm only like a 7-8-year-old kid, still trying to pick up the language and stuff, and trying to like have those conversations with my mom. Sometimes I would say, hey, I'm doing great and stuff, but obviously there was ways to like go around it, but it still kind of impacted me to the way where like being talkative was a bad thing. I transitioned into high school, and that talkative nature and character in me still stayed, and that kind of still haunted me there, where I continue to try to be my authentic self, but in ways where I was like being, I guess, pointed at in a negative light. And it was in high school that one of the professors that wasn't even mine, he said I wasn't ever going to amount to anything just because I was a student who was always clowning around, or it was a student that was always having the conversations, but I think it was my curiosity just trying to find my own path. And the more questions I asked, the more opportunity that I would receive moving forward. And later on in college, and I navigated to college, there was a lot of like no's I received within college applications until that one yes that I received from the University of Albany through the EOP program, which gave me the opportunity to really see that there was a way out. I'm first generation to graduate high school, first generation to be in college, and first generation to be corporate America. And I think what I want to address to you guys today is that I think my authentic self and being able to put that forward allowed me to really show that the people that do, have those racial comments or those notions of, us being a specific way or being too talkative in the classroom is an example of, my success will be the revenge you will see, and that will be the light that you will, continue to honor. Yes. And I remember going back to high school, and that same professor, I spoke to him, and I was the commencement speaker for the University of Albany graduation in 2016. And I spoke about the concept of paying it forward. And I went back to my high school as an opportunity to speak to the kids and speak to the high schoolers. And through conversations, and they wrote articles for me, and so it made it to the news. That same professor saw the article, and he read the article. And when he saw me, he said to me, "Hey, Christian, long time no talk. I've seen you on the article. I'm so," and he stopped. And he said, "Congratulations." At that point, I knew I won the battle. And it was an opportunity for me to self-reflect that sometimes, your actions, your success speaks for itself. So when I continue racism and I continue it to the workforce now, I put my pride aside, and I'm making an opportunity for it to be a teachable moment for those who are using it. And I still continue to do that on a day-to-day basis, where I'm empowering my little brothers to be self-aware and also use your successes as the tools that will help you empower the people around you.
Hello. Can everyone hear me well? Yes. So first and foremost, thank you very. I will stand up, yes, ma'am. So thank you so much for having me here with you all today. For me, I would say that institutional segregation in higher education is the active segregation of students academically. So we know the statistics. We know that students of color are underperforming. We know that students of color are not being given opportunities, and we're acknowledging the problem but not acting on it. And I think that we have so many individuals who are now in the power and in the seats to make changes, but their budgets are not reflecting those changes. Their conversation is not reflecting those changes. So what we have to do now is be active. Because that institutional racism isn't just in the dollar amounts, but also what happens on our campuses. There's a lack of opportunities, lack of mental health support for students of color, lack of social assets for us as well, and everything that our communities try to put on our campuses in order to encourage ourselves and to provide ourselves with more opportunities keeps getting ticked down. And what I mean by that is when we have those social programs, when we have students of color speaking out and speaking up, it's every single time it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle between the students, the administration, and we want our reparations because we deserve them. So for me, and my own story is seeing, coming from Brooklyn, New York, a single parent household, I got to Albany thinking that there was no way out. There was no way out of poverty. There was no way out of that financial struggle. But getting to college made me see the other way, see the other side. But getting there is just one step of it. And I can continue talking on this, but I'm sure there's a lot of other questions. I'm going to keep it short and I think Jamaica wanted to speak, so we're going to come back to this.
Thank you.
All right, sis. All right, sis. You gonna make me stand up?
Yes, I am, of course. Yeah.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Again, Jamaica Miles. I am the State Organizing and Training Director for Citizen Action of New York, but more importantly, I'm the mother of 4. Like, that's my job when I wake up in the morning. That's when I go to sleep at night. That's my job right now with me thinking about what's happening at my house. There are 4 children that I'm responsible for and their education. My oldest is 23, and she is an English teacher at Schenectady High School. All right, and then I have a 14-year-old, a 7-year-old, and my youngest is almost 20 months. So us being in our public school system is something I am painfully well acquainted with, right? And the way that we see it, what we've already heard, how we see the racism showing up is that segregation. But it's also, when we listen to the stories that people share about what happened, these are stories from people of color. We don't hear these same stories from our white students, right? It's that disproportionality about how we are treated in our public schools, how our children are treated in our public schools, including the lack of cultural competency. The school system was based on white supremacy. Let's be real, the public schools was not created for us. And therefore, it currently stands that they don't think about us when they are creating curriculum unless it is intentional. They do not think about us when creating programs unless it is intentional. They do not think about us when creating after-school resources and supports unless it is intentional. And it has never been intentional until we have stood up and demanded it.
That's right.
So when we see racism in our schools, it is at every single level, starting at pre-K all the way through college, right? We've heard that story already. My personal story, there are many because I've got 4 children, but one being where I watched my oldest, they wanted to suspend her, but they didn't want to suspend somebody else. Same situation. And I know what the difference was. I have a black child and the other child was white. And the words that they used to describe my child were not the words they used to describe others. So she was disruptive. And they were worried that she might be dangerous. This was 5th grade.
Wow.
Because of a story she wrote that was about General Hospital. Let's be real. It was Sunny Corinthos. It was about a soap opera that she watched with her grandmother, right? But because of that, they were concerned. We should really look at her. Let's talk about this. But when someone else writes an elaborate story, they are inventive and look at their extensive imaginations. And when other children are talkative, they are inquisitive. But when our children talk, they talk too much or they are disruptive. So we see racism in our public school through every single thread. And we, for 7 years, me, and for longer, many others, have been fighting against that in our local communities. I started off as a volunteer with Alliance for Quality Education and Citizen Action of New York, being a parent advocate and activist. And now I'm the state organizing director for Citizen Action of New York.
Yes, honey.
That's investment in our leaders.
Yes.
And now that's what I get to do, to create that change and to allow other parents to be able to stand up and create that change in their local schools.
Thank you, Jamaica. All right. So the next question is, and everyone doesn't have to answer it, but if you want to, that's fine. So what are the systemic solutions that need to be enacted in order to address the current disparities and equity in education, K-12, higher ed? I think some of them bubbled up already. Sounds like organizing was one of them. So, Shamika, you want to start since you kind of, okay.
Because I was being quiet. She's going to make me stand up again. So the first thing I'm going to say, many in the room are not going to be surprised. We need to fully fund our schools, right? We can't expect our schools to do something when they have nothing. Schenectady, as Senator Jackson mentioned, is a majority marginalized student body where we are owed $46 million. We have one of our schools has a sensory room for students that just need a break, right? Like they're overwhelmed, they're homeless, they watch someone in their family get shot or arrested, and they're supposed to go to school the next day. So this school has created a space for children to be able to take that time and for there to be someone in that room. Right now, that room is like a quarter of the size of this room, inside a building of 440 students, and has one paraprofessional. She's not a social worker. She's not a guidance counselor. If we had that money, all of our schools would have sensory rooms because all of our children have those traumas in their life. And we'd be able to have guidance counselors and social workers to address their social and emotional needs. So the funding is absolutely imperative. And in Albany, the city of Albany, just so you know, it's more than $20 million. So this is not like something where we say, oh, well, Schenectady has a lot. The majority of school districts that have majority marginalized students, Black, Brown, and Latinx, are owed the most money. The most. Again, that's racism. So fully fund our schools.
Thank you. Hello?
Okay, so I'm gonna have to second that message on fully funding our schools, in addition to just talking about EOP and programs just like it. So we have EOP, SEEK, HEOP for all of the different universities and institutions across New York State. And this year, I believe in the budget, it has been proposed to give a cut to EOP. And 5% cut to EOP when we are not even fully funding students who are currently EOP. We have, I believe, almost about $3,500 is the separation between the funding that those students receive as well as and what they have to owe back to the schools and the universities. So each year you have about 12,000 students applying to those programs, but they can only admit about 3,000. So how are we gonna get more students of color infiltrated into our schools and universities if they're trying to cut back on the funds that are being received? Programs are trying to admit more people, but are being told, no, you have to cut it down. On my campus particularly, we had 200 students come in my class. The following year, 250. But because the state wanted to pull back again, they had to pull back 50 students and go back to 200. For a campus that has 13,000 undergraduates. So how are you really going to say that we're not, this is not racist, but you're not funding the people who really need the money? And then the second part I would say about that is more scholarship opportunities. We have so many successful people of color in this world, and obviously everybody can't open up their pockets. But we do need more because there's a lot more students coming into our systems. 40% of undergraduates around the state of America are underrepresented minorities. That is a large number. And a lot of institutions are not prepared for us to infiltrate their campuses, but we have to prepare ourselves. We have to ensure that our communities are prepared to have us here. So, yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Train.
This is my third panel of the day, and we've been talking about counseling since 9 o'clock this morning. Wow. And so there is a tremendous need to improve the services that are being delivered to our children, whether through guidance counselors, social workers, psychologists, or psychiatrists in our school. My feeling is everybody needs to be trained.
That's right.
We just can't assume that because you are a guidance counselor, you're a psychologist, you're a social worker, that you have cultural competence to be able to educate and service our children. So first and foremost, in addition to increasing the funding, let's make sure that within the increase in funding, you also have monies to be able to train those new people coming into the system. And so I wanted to really drive that home, because what good is it if we have people in front of our children with critical needs and they are making the situation worse than better? So let's focus on the training, let's focus on the support, and understand that our children are in dire straits. Just go into public schools sometimes. Just go into some of the universities sometimes and see what is happening where there is a preponderance of people of color. Talk about systemic racism, they are not getting the services that you would see if you went into an majority white institution. We talk about kids falling behind in higher education. Well, what happens at Harvard? They get remedial training when they first walk in the door, because the school wants to make sure, they don't publicize this, the school wants to make sure that the child succeeds. And so the school invests in the dollars. They don't want someone coming from Harvard or Brown or Yale, all schools that I've lectured in. They don't want people coming from those schools and not succeeding. I'm presently in a doctoral program, another one. Call me crazy, but that's what I'm doing. Every student at Duke University gets an opportunity to go into counseling, to get remedial services, to send all of their papers to the Writing Center. They just need to send the papers there a week in advance, and the Writing Center will help correct their papers and send it back to them so that they learn in the process and they're not getting a low grade because they haven't learned how to write properly in K-12 system. These private schools and these universities with top names are doing what they need to do in order to make sure every child is successful. I will say, my daughter went to Wellesley and she started an academic enrichment academic program for girls of color who were not succeeding. And I will say that I had to make a trip to Wellesley to get that to make that happen. Yes. That you can't admit girls into this institution. All of them had to have at least a 1200 on the SAT. They all had it, but when you looked at the correlation between the SAT and the grades, then the African American girls were not getting the grades that the white students were getting. So I'm saying, even though you have the policies in place, you still need parent advocacy. And parent advocacy in higher education is extremely important. Look at how much money you're paying or your children have to pay back. You must, in order to curb the tide of systemic racism, you must be an active parent just like you were when they were in elementary school.
Absolutely. So before, even if you're one, I want to give the one last question because I want to be able to open it up for more, so you can incorporate if you wanted to respond to that one and this one too. So I think it's similar to what Dr. Trainum started off and others have kind of already seeped into the conversation, which is a call to action. And so many young people specifically have the chant, I believe that we will win. So what actions can people in this room take right now to make sure Albany is addressing these needs? So I want to give Christian and Jonathan an opportunity to go first if they want to, since they didn't get to answer the last one. Yeah, go ahead, Christian.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, Christian.
Apologies for not staying up before. But I think the call to action here, and many of the panelists here said it very frankly, I think an opportunity to invest in mentors. I think just looking back at my career, I've always been inspired by people that were doing the things that I couldn't obtain and do. And my curiosity was always to, like, how did you do it? So I think, when it comes to parents and when it comes to different mentors, I think what we can do at this very moment is invest in ourselves to self-reflect of those moments of discomfort and being able to share those stories with others. I think when the opportunity I got to graduate, it was a feeling that not only I experienced, but I was bringing my family along the way. And I think that's very, very important when it comes to different conversations that we're having here now. I remember going to EOP Advocacy one year, and it really, really struck me because I was sharing, my experiences with the people in front of me, where the secretary, where the other legislators were there, she started tearing. And it was a moment of me to say, wow, like, the journey that I've had or the journey that I'm going through, others have experienced along the way. And I think what we can do at this very moment is being able to invest in ourselves, to be mentors, to have those teachable moments, and to remember those moments of discomfort that really, really are still within us, to be able to self-reflect and continue to pay it forward.
I think that one of the things we must do is take parent-teacher conferences very serious. That is your opportunity to get either one-on-one or small group sessions with your teacher to advocate for your child, but also understand if there are deficiencies where you can go home and help. The other thing is the school vote. I live in Arbor Hill in Albany, and oftentimes when I go for voting, there's like parents out there that want to vote, but they didn't even know about it beforehand. So let's also inform our parents and our people about when the school vote happens, because that school board makes a difference sometimes in how we communicate information and some of the decisions that are being made. The other benefit, at least from my vantage point, is we run the Summer Youth Employment Program out of the city of Albany through one of my offices. We have 1,200 young people in that program. And so for 5 weeks, I get a chance, and we get a chance as our city to see them in business environments. But the extra piece that we put on it was on Friday, we're doing enrichment programs at colleges and universities like Albany and Sage, so that when they do apply for these colleges and universities, it's not their first time on the campus, right? We're not talking about financial aid at their senior year. We're talking about it at the 14 years old, right? They're understanding what scholarships to apply for, what foundations to look after, and using social media. So one little small tip I would say is, we're all in this social media age. We tell our young people to follow the business you want to work for on social media. It's really that simple. That's how you can create a mentor. That's how you can understand what leads they're looking for and what interests they have. And I think if we start with those 3 areas, they're all tangible ideas for us to move forward. We'll make a big change in this next generation, if not right now.
I'm going to try to talk really fast like I used to do when I was really little. So there's a number of things that you can do, and starting immediately, you become a volunteer or member with Citizen Action of New York or Alliance for Quality Education. We are across New York State, and we want to have conversations with people face to face. We want to go and knock on doors and talk to parents where they're at. We're coming to them. We're not asking them to come to us. That includes here in Albany that Amy Jones is at the back of the room. So if you want to know what we're doing around education, see Amy Jones. Also, make sure that, again, across New York State, we are in Long Island, New York City, Hudson Valley, Binghamton, Utica, Buffalo, Rochester. If you are someplace in New York, there is a Citizen Action or Alliance for Quality Education near you, and there's an opportunity for you to be a part of creating the change, just like Senator Jackson. You don't have to walk 150 miles. You might just have to walk 2 blocks. Or you might need to just be able to make a phone call. All of us should call the governor's office and say, fully fund our public schools. If my phone was next to me right now, I'd give you the number. Before this is over, I'm going to get my phone and I'm going to give y'all the number so you can take out your cell phone, call the governor's office, and leave a voicemail. There's what, like 40, 50 people in here right now? Leave 50 messages to fully fund our schools. That's how we create change, because it's never given to us if we don't demand it and if we don't show up in numbers. That's how we can do something right now.
Anybody else? Dr. Who said I cannot? Yes, of course you can.
Just really quickly, I would say, how many of you in here are parents? Yeah, we got a lot of parents in the room. And if you haven't, if your children are not in college yet, start college funds for your children. It's so important to already prepare in advance so that by the time that child is 17, 18 years old, there is already money that has been set aside for those children. It's not just tuition, it's not just housing, room and board, but there are needs that they have on campus. Books are crazy amounts of money nowadays, and you really need to have a preparation put forth for your children. And another part, she already mentioned it, get on those school boards, get into those conversations, because we need your voices. Take your children seriously. There are a lot of children that express their struggles in their classroom, saying that there are professors who are not listening to them, who are not treating them well, but we often think it's our children being disruptive. It's our children who are part of the problem. You have to listen to your children and take their needs seriously, because it's not, it can be professors who are sorry, my apologies, who are aggressive towards your children. So that's very important in seeing both sides of the story, and that's really it.
Senator Montgomery?
Yes. This is better for me.
Okay, all right.
Over here? Okay.
Yes, thank you. And my response to this is I think some of us are wearing our 50-year pins. This is the 50th anniversary of the Education Opportunity Programs. And I think that, thank you, yeah. And I would be remiss if I did not give honor and recognition to the fact that these programs came into being based on the fight by 50 years ago, way back then, of Black elected officials right here in Albany. And I want to I use that one of those people was a speaker, Deputy Speaker Arthur O. Eve. So a few years back, we named the Education Opportunity Program to the Arthur O. Eve Education Opportunity Programs in the state of New York. So I wish you would start using that, honor him, because this came about because of the political process worked on your behalf, on our behalf. That's number one. Number two, they looked for a way of institutionalizing this so that it was able to last for so many millions of young people for generations. That's very different from funding a program. So let's look for ways of institutionalizing opportunity. And I know it doesn't always work. We can't always ensure that it's going to happen because we do that, but at least we have a better chance. So, and let me just say to you, I know there's thousands of people here every day, right about now, this week, last week, next week, from this way, until the budget passes, the end of the budget period, the last night of that budget, there will be hundreds and hundreds of people in the Capitol. They're all looking for their thing, their money. And they peel off money, $500,000 here, and $1 million here, and $2 million here. And it's all, a lot of it is in the name of they're working for our children. So there's millions and millions of dollars outside of the education system that is peeled off by people who have institutionalized the process of taking money out of education for various purposes, like their dreams. But the dream of Arthur O. Eve was you sitting here 50 years later. So let's get our movement in context. It has to be institutionalized. It has to be there so that it can be. Our young people need to be automatic access to opportunities. It shouldn't be just a happenstance. They were lucky that they were in this church. They were lucky that they were in this program. They were lucky that they had this group of parents. We cannot allow our children to have that kind of future that is just totally by accident. We've got to build systems, and those systems are based on those institutions that are here that should be, and we hope that when we continue to fight, we're fighting for an institution that supports them. So I didn't want to miss an opportunity to share that. I feel so strong about it. We can't forget the shoulders on which we stand, because if we do, we are going to be overtaken by people who don't know the history, don't care about it, and don't care about you. It's up to us to make sure that the legacies that have gone before us work for us and work for our children's future. So thank you, everybody.
I have to always thank my sister Velmanette Montgomery for all of the work that she has done over the years to keep the issues before us. And I am just happy today that this brilliant young man sitting next to me we gave him an opportunity to be an intern. And Zakia, when she was still a parent of many children, but she started out with us and helped us to do some things at a charter school and helped us to think about parents in a different way. And she has just moved professionally, phenomenally. So I want you to give these two young people oh, I certainly love them both. But you know, what do we do about, what can we do? We all know, we have the lingo. We understand what the issues are. And we can sit around and reiterate what the problems are over and over and over again and never walk out with solutions to the problem. So I'm just going to start out with some solutions. First of all, don't think that because you're so educated and have degrees and titles behind your name that you still don't have to roll up your sleeves and get down and organize and work in the community. When I look back at history, I look at men and women who had made it on their own but came back into the community to organize and to fight for other people. Now, just using an example, we all know Harriet Tubman. She got her freedom. But what did she do? She came back 19 times and freed other people. And what did she say? I would have freed more if they had only known that they were slaves. That's the mentality we have to have. That just because we make it, and we may have a certain amount of luxury and luxury cars and big bank accounts and red bottom shoes and all of that, which you deem as a sign of success. If we don't free our people, then what good is it? And so we have to strategize and organize from the ground level. One of the brothers that I'm learning a lot from, I always have to pay homage to him when he's in the room, is Brother Leonard Dunstan, who was a commissioner in the state of New York when I was a commissioner over Division for Youth, and started a rites of passage in all of the facilities that housed our young people and separated them out from the adults. So Brother Dunstan, who's still on the battlefield today, Brother Dunstan, could you just stand so people will know who you are? And thank you. Listen, I can't keep up with this man. Any issue that comes out, he's on the case. I call him the watchman on the wall. He lets us know what we need to do, how we need to do it, and why we need to advocate on behalf of children and families. So we need leaders who understand how to lead people. We need people who are willing to be followers, even though you may be a leader yourself. and we need to organize around issues. We can't tackle the whole problem by ourselves, but we can start chipping away at some of the issues that plague our communities. Even though we may have bigger bank accounts, the issues are still the same on the ground. So let's organize. Let's take our degrees and use them to help other people. Let's take our advances that we've made and try to help somebody else. We got to reach back and bring somebody else with us. We have to mentor our young people.
That's right.
Mentoring doesn't cost a lot of money. You just have to have a commitment that you're going to bring a young person along on your journey with you to teach them how to do what you've done so that they can be more successful than you are. So mentoring, organizing, and then we have to be political. I used to teach in higher education. This is the last thing. I used to teach in higher education. I taught leadership management and curriculum development in the university system. No matter what course I was teaching on a graduate level, I always said this: education is politics, and politics is education. That if you don't understand that, you can never impact the system. So you have to be political. Can I get a witness?
Yes.
You have to be political sororities. You have to be political fraternities.
Yes.
You have to be political links. You have to be political average citizen to make sure that the pressure from the outside is coming from the inside at the same time so you can effectuate change. We can do it. We've done it before. Right. Go back and read your history. Read about Richard Allen, who started the AME Church and spread all over the world, how he recruited 3,000 soldiers to go fight in the war. He did that, didn't even have a cell phone, didn't have a contact number. How did he do that? Go back and read about John Rock, who also recruited. He was a teacher, he was a medical doctor, and he was a teacher, a dentist, because they wouldn't let him be a medical doctor in the 1800s. So he said, okay, I'll be a dentist. And then he decided he was going to be a medical doctor. He found a way to make that happen. But then he said, you know, I had such a hard time doing this that I need to be a lawyer. And so he went back to Boston and became a lawyer and was the first black man to get a license to speak before the Supreme Court. Now, that's a black history fact that you don't know.
Yes, ma'am.
So
yes,
go
ma'am.
back and say, I learned something today. Commissioner taught us a lesson today. Yes. What perseverance, what fortitude did that man have to have from 19 years old to 41 years old when he died? What have you done with your life?
All right, yeah.
What have you done?
One thing Dr. Chain didn't tell you, she's a preacher. She forgot to mention that part. But she kind of showed it up right there. So we are in closing minutes. We have a few things I want to do. One is, you know, as part of my growth and understanding what's happening, wait, Senator Montgomery, first, before you leave real quick, I just want to acknowledge that we have, which is off topic, but we have two bills. Senator Montgomery is sponsoring one of them, our Safe and Support, Safe and Supportive Schools bill is sponsored by Senator Montgomery, and also Assemblywoman Nolan, and I think co-sponsored with Latrice Walker. So I wanted to make sure we honor that and make sure we do that with you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So we have time for two questions. What we're going to do is have two people ask back to back. We'll figure out how we do that. And then raise your hand if you want to do something right now to fight for more funding for our schools.
Take out your phones.
Raise your hand. Everybody okay, so let's have the two questions asked, and then yes.
About more funding, which I totally agree with, that we definitely need more funding for our schools, but I haven't heard specific policy things about what you want to do with that money, because we see even in
I got you.
when we have like the whole school program and we throw money at schools,
Absolutely.
those things are still not addressed. Kids still can't read.
Gotcha.
All these things.
Okay.
So that's one piece. But you guys are talking about organizing, but organizing around what specific policy and how we
got you.
address
Yep.
specifically these institutions that
We got you. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Somebody else, yes.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Jones, advocate. And I do understand, I don't necessarily have a question, but I have a statement.
Can you like, all right, like,
Our
yeah.
schools have guidance counselors. the so-called leaders don't understand what the guidance counselor is supposed to do. They think the guidance counselor is a police officer. They think the guidance counselor is a dean of students. They think the guidance counselor is penalization. And so the reason why our children are coming to our schools with not postpartum stress disorder, but constant current stress disorder and cannot get past it is because the guidance counselor, the psychiatrist, the social worker are not used in the capacity that they are supposed to be used in. So until that is checked, then I don't care how much money you put into the system. Until the leader understands, we'll never make a change.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to take one more question and we're going to answer it. Yes.
So I know we talked a lot about like getting funding for schools and stuff, but I know we didn't really get to talk about the impact of teachers of color. I was wondering if any of you could talk about that when we're talking about getting funding.
So we have
One around teachers of color. I'm sorry, we can take
And
the
funding.
two. One around teachers of color, and then why are we fighting for money for the sake of what? I already see from our peripheral that Jamaica is standing up already, and she's ready to answer at least the one question.
It's both.
So, okay, so this is what we're going to do because we literally have 7 minutes.
minute
I am
and
a
30
stickler for
seconds.
keeping the time. You're not doing this in a minute, 30 seconds, but I'll give you 2.
Okay.
All right.
So the way that we decide how that money is spent is that we actually go out into communities and we talk to parents and students and to community members and ask them, what are the things that you want implemented in your schools? And then after we get that money, we go to the school boards and we demand that that's what they put in the policies, including that we ask for anti-racism and anti-bias training, that we look for cultural competency, that we look to hire cultural competency teachers, or I forget what the exact term is, but it's an actual position that then looks at the school district and says, are we environmentally accepting of all of our community members? And also having safe and supportive schools so that we end suspensions pre-K through 3rd grade, because no kindergartner should be kicked out of schools. So there are a number of policy and money pieces that we get from our local schools. It's not for us to decide up here. It's for us to go back into those communities and talk to those parents and knock on those doors and decide what are the policies in those communities that are necessary, including who are the teachers that need to be hired, and is there a priority around hiring teachers of color, and if not, why, and what is it that we need to do in that school district to make sure they are prioritizing and doing the outreach to intentionally hire teachers of color, not just the one in Schenectady that was my daughter.
Oh, wow. Anybody want to address the teacher one? And because I want to give us to do an action real quick. I'm sorry.
I was just trying to make it quick.
No? Okay, cool. So this is, we had hands up in regards to people who said, yes, I'm down. So the reason I asked you if you're down to do something for our children right now is because what I want us to do is record a 40-second video. And it goes a little something like this. Governor Cuomo, we need you to fund the $4.1 billion of the old our children. Black Lives Matter, fund our schools. Does that sound something that people can do? Yeah. So if you're down to do it, I'm going to ask you to stand up. And we literally are going to do this on the spot because that's how we do. Yep. So let's practice it real quick. We're going to say, Governor Cuomo, we need you to fund the $4.1 billion owed our children. Black Lives Matter, fund our schools. Black Lives Matter, fund our schools. All right? It's okay if you mess it up. We got a bunch of cameras going on. Y'all are going to be beautiful because I believe in all of you. All right, I'm going to count down to 3, okay? Here we go. Governor Cuomo, we need you to fund the $4.1 billion owed our children. Black Lives Matter, fund our schools. Black Lives Matter, fund our schools. Black Lives Matter, fund our schools. And so one thing is it matters to do that, but is as simple as that, right? Sometimes we get caught up in like, oh, we need to have 100 people. We need to be in the streets all the time. We need to march. It is as simple as that. Imagine the fact, if 50 people in this room did a video like that and sent it on social media, it is a new platform. It is not to substitute organizing. It's supposed to support the organizing. Each and every one of us, how many of us have watched a video and clicked on it and liked it, but also clicked on the link to give money to it? Or it brings awareness to somebody else who didn't know about it. I want us to not be desensitized by the conversation of institutionalized racism. It can get overbearing. For us, it doesn't, right? Because we can define what the impact looks like when institutional racism exists. right? So rather we're sitting here saying that we have a governor who doesn't fund our higher education, who when we're in CUNY, who is raising taxes, raising tuition year after year, when we know that that institution and those institutions educate the most black, brown, and immigrant and undocumented young people in our city and our state, right? For 13 years, we've been waiting for the billions of dollars to owe to whom? Black, brown, and poor children. Now, I ain't saying Governor Cuomo's racist, but I can damn sure say his policies are, right? And so if we can define what it looks like, then we don't get tired and we don't get desensitized by the conversation of institutional racism, right? So as we do that as AQE and other organizations and people in this space, we have a culturally responsive education bill. So the sister talked about what we getting money for. Money for the sake of money is not what we need. You're absolutely right. Culturally responsive education is something that's clear. We know we need it. We have people on this panel talk about it. Why are children, black and brown children in grades K to 3 being suspended? More than just K to 3, but why is it not okay that we are saying we don't want that anymore? It is because the system has bought into the fact that our children's bodies need to be controlled. And I challenge that and I rebuke that at every turn. Because I have 8 children whose bodies don't need to be controlled. What it does is begin to include a systemic racism and institutionalized racism as we talk about the justice system and policing, right? Because now, once again, our children's bodies need to be controlled because we need to handcuff them, or we need to put them behind a seat, or we need to beat them, or we need to shoot them because they move their bodies. So we are already in school teaching people that by movement, by verbal, it is violence, it is danger. It is something we need to control. As AQE, we challenge that on every front, right? And the people in this room challenge that on every front. But when all those things are up against us, and we have a governor that says money doesn't matter, but we just named all the things that need funding. We talked about the people impacted. I ain't saying the governor racist, but his policies sure are, right? And so once you know, you can't hide behind it anymore. Because when you hide behind it, that's telling us that you don't really care. So my question to you is, you were able to step up and do a video. That is the first step. Jamaica was clear. There's a lot of things we can do. Some of the folks on this panel. Follow us. Challenge. You're here today. Talk to your state legislator. You may not have known about CFE. Ask him, what is he doing? Ask her, what are they doing to bring the dollars home for our children? A blue wave in the state means nothing if the policies don't follow. Because all it is was a blue wave, right? And so as we close out, what I want us to do, what I hope you will do is what we always do, right? Is like stand up and end in a chant, because that's what we do when we organize. So if everybody would stand with me. And so what I need you to say with me is, when I say whose schools, you say? Our schools. Whose schools? 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 Our schools. That's how you have to go out of here. Don't let a legislator walk past you and you're not asking them, where's the $4.1 billion? And if they don't know, email us at aqeny.org, because those are the ones that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.